Welcome to the shop. My name is Rachel Gingell. In this video, I'm going to show you how to do a tune-up on your Ford tractor. I'm working on a Ford 3000, but these techniques apply to a Ford 2000, 3000, or 4000 with a 3-cylinder gas engine. I'll show you how to put points, condenser, and rotor, and cap, new spark plug wires, new spark plugs, a starter solenoid, a safety switch, all onto your tractor. And at the beginning, I'm also going to show you how to troubleshoot in case your tractor doesn't start and you know that it's a spark problem. So go ahead and follow along. At the end of this video, I know you'll have the confidence to do a tune-up on your very own Ford tractor. So most people will choose to do a tune-up for one of two reasons. One is just regular maintenance, which is an excellent idea, and I definitely recommend regular maintenance in this regard. The second reason is you had a great running tractor, and the next time you go out to use it, it won't start anymore. So a tractor needs two things in order to start. The first is fuel, and if you need help rebuilding your carburetor, we have a separate video that goes over this Holley carburetor. The second is spark, and that's what we're going to discuss in this video. So if you were in the situation that I'm in right now, where yesterday I had a great running tractor and today it won't start, you need to say which part is it that's causing me the trouble of my tractor not starting. So when I'm in that situation, I use a tool like this. This is a 12-volt tester. However, if you have other antique tractors, it does work for 6-volt or 12-volt applications. And it looks like a screwdriver kind of with a light bulb in the handle, but it's just a probe on the end. It's not a screwdriver. And then on this end, there's a claw end, and that connects to ground. So I'll show you how I use this. I'm going to connect this to ground, and I'm going to choose this ground spot on the frame. You can ground it anywhere that you can get a good ground on your tractor. And then you can test it and make sure your tool's working by touching that end, the hot end of the solenoid that comes right from the battery. If you don't have a light here, maybe your tool is bad, like your light bulb burned out, or your battery is dead. That would probably be the two things if your light doesn't come on. Hopefully it does. That's not the most common thing to happen here. So you know you have power at your solenoid. So now your next step would be to trace that down to the coil, and you can test your probe on the far end of the coil and turn the key on. I'm not going to roll it over, I'm just turning it on, and you can see, let me touch it, that the light comes on, which is good. The next step is to make sure that your tractor is in neutral, and you can see that mine is. I'm going to touch my probe on the opposite end of the coil and roll it over. And you can see that it does nothing. That didn't even act like it wanted to engage. Let me see if I can get it to roll over. That's better. So when it rolls over like that, your tool should have the light bulb come on and off. If your light bulb comes on and off, that means that your points inside your distributor are opening and closing. That's what it should do. You can see that mine didn't react that way. It stayed off. That tells me that my points are not making connection like they should. And it tells me that on this tractor, my problem is within the distributor. Now let's say you did this test and your light comes on and off. You know that your points are working as it should. What's next? The next step is to use a spark analyzer, which I have here. So you would put the one end onto the top of a spark plug and the other end like inside your distributor cap like this, so that you can test the quality of your spark. If you see in your window a nice blue, healthy spark, that would tell you that your coil, your cap, your rotor, that specific spark plug wire are all good. If you see a weak, yellowish spark inside the window, that would tell you that one of those things I just mentioned, the coil, the cap, the spark plug wire, etc., could be the reason why your tractor won't start up. Another reason why you could see weak spark is if the gap on your points isn't quite right. So hopefully between those two tests, I have just given you a lot of ideas that you can troubleshoot, and you can run through those and test, and hopefully you'll be able to figure out where the problem lies on your tractor. And from there you can order the correct parts and make the necessary repairs. So I know my problem is inside the distributor, so I'm going to start there on my tractor. First thing you want to do is take off your ground battery cable. So just lift that off, move it right out of the way. That will prevent any accidental arcing while you're working. The next thing you want to do is move down here to your distributor cap and take a look at how your wires are orientated. The firing order on these 3-cylinder engines is 1, 2, 3. It's got to be the easiest firing order. And I know that my wire number 1 is back here because I trace it through and I look, and cylinder number 1 is always the closest to the radiator. 2 is here and 3 is here, and you can touch those wires against the spark plug until you know where your number 1, 2, 3 wires are. Your tractor could be different. Yours could have 1, 2, 3, or something different than mine. So you need to look at your own tractor. Don't just take my word for it and copy my position on the cap. Look for yourself. Once you have that situated, once you know what your order is or where number 1 is on your cap, you can go ahead and pop your wires off. The center one is the coil wire. Let me get that out of the way. And I've just got one more to move out of here. That back one's the hardest one because it's so tight against the manifold. You can see that I did also remove the vacuum line, and then there's the little sheet metal shield that's up in here too. I took those off just so that you can more easily see what I'm doing. You don't need to take yours off. You can leave yours on unless you're trying to show somebody. This one's really stuck. It might just stay with the cap maybe. It was so close though. I'm gonna leave it with the cap and see if it'll come off that way. So the next step is just take a screwdriver, and there's 2 straps like that one you see in the front. There's a second one in the back. And then you have the cap loose. There we go. Let me move that out of the way. I'm just gonna take it off now. So when you take your cap off, sometimes these tabs or the center carbon will be broken off, and that could be a reason that your tractor won't start. So inspect your cap and replace it if need be. Underneath this next piece that you see is called a rotor. You can just pull that right off. Sometimes these tabs will be bent or even broken or burned. They'll be black, and that would be a problem with your rotor. Underneath here you see a dust cover, and that should be able to just pry right out of there. It's moving. Sometimes they're really tight. There we go. So the dust cover comes off, and that shows us inside both the points and the condenser. When you are ready to purchase parts, you can purchase them on my website, which is farmtractorrepair.com. Let me go over the choices that you're gonna have. First, you're gonna need a tune-up kit, which is points, condenser, and a rotor, and then you can add to that kit. So you can add a distributor cap sold individually and a dust cover if you need both of those. You can add spark plug wires shown here, a starter solenoid if you think yours needs to be replaced. Spark plugs are sold as a set of 3 typically. I just have one on the table. They're sold as a set of 3. And then we have these 2 different styles of safety switches, and you can purchase whatever style is suitable for your tractor. If you don't already own a manual, that would be a good idea as well. We offer 2 different manuals to choose from. This is the first choice. It's published by a company called I&T. You can see that it's a thinner manual in comparison to the thickness of this manual, and the price is accordingly. So if you're on a budget, you can choose this manual. It's still a very good choice, and it covers all the major components of the tractor. But if you can afford this larger manual, I would definitely recommend it. This manual is fantastic. This is the one that we reference here at the shop. I'll just flip through it so you get an idea of what's included in here. There's all sorts of diagrams and written instructions, all the specifications that you need. And this manual will be a fantastic resource to you if you don't already own it. Again, all of these items are on my website, which is farmtractorrepair.com. A purchase on our site will help to fund future tractor tutorials. So let's get back to work. I'm going to go ahead and remove the condenser first. There's just one screw that holds the condenser in place, and I'm trying to keep my hand out of the way so you can see the screw there. So that comes out, and once I get close, I want to be really careful not to lose the screw in the bottom of the distributor. So I'm going to use this magnet to lift the screw up. I thought I lost it there, that's why I stopped talking, but I got it. Okay, so now you can see that my condenser is free here. The next step is to come around into the points. So there's 2 screws that hold the points into place, one in the front, one in the back. So this screw up here is the first one. And same goes for this. Once it's loose, I'm going to use the magnet to pull the screw out. Well, it's close. Let me just see if I can grab it with my fingers. I can. Oh, there we go. Next, I have one more screw all the way in the back here. So I'm going to reach in there and take that out. It doesn't look like you can see that screw very well on the camera, but you'll see it when you're working on your own tractor. So there's that screw setting aside. And with that, I'm ready to use these needle nose pliers to grab right onto the points and the condenser all together and free it up. So once I have this pulled out as one assembly, then you can go ahead and take this nut off the end. This is just way too hard to take off when it's in the distributor. It's just super tight. So pull the condenser and the points out together as one assembly. The nut comes off the end. Keep track of that. Then your condenser will pull off. Leave this black wire there with your distributor and pull your points out like this. Here are our new points. The first thing you want to do is just loosen up that nut on the end to give you a gap here so that you can slide your power wire right over top. And then you have your new condenser, and that's going to slide right over top of there too. So, oops. This is why you do it out of the distributor. It's hard enough out of the distributor, let alone trying to do it in. So you can start that by hand and then tighten this up the rest of the way with a little wrench. This is going to make it so much easier to go into the distributor. Not all distributors, you have this luxury of situating it out of the distributor, so that's really wonderful. Now you're ready to just set it down in place. Now underneath here, it's really important. You're going to see this little tiny wire that's called the ground wire. It's underneath here. Let me point to it with these pliers. Get a hold of it so you can see it. That ground wire I like to put on top of the point. So you're going to line it up like that, and that's going to go through the hole there and be held in place with the screw. Back here, let me just press that down. If you look at the bottom of your points, let me show you on the old points here. See this little tab that's on the bottom? There's a hole in the distributor, and that's where that lines up too. That'll help you get everything in the right place as well. So you're going to put one screw here, another screw in the back, and then a third screw here to hold the condenser down. And the condenser is going to go right in place. My hand just covers this up so much, so let me try to use these needle nose pliers to show you where it goes. Right there, that's going to be where the screw goes for the condenser. So you tighten this screw up for the condenser, put the two screws in for the points, but don't tighten them up all the way until you're ready to set the points. So I'm going to get started on that, and we'll come back when we're ready to set the points. When you adjust the points, you need to be at high lobe. High lobe is described right here. You can see on this shaft how there's these low and high points all the way around. So you have to make this adjustment when your points are touching right there at a high lobe, right there where that orange piece is connected. That's high lobe. If your distributor is not at high lobe, you can hook up the battery, press the starter button, and roll it around, or I should say turn the key enough to roll it around until this shaft is at high lobe. Once you're at high lobe, then you're ready to make the adjustment. I have a 25 thousandths feeler gauge here, and you just set it in here and slide it back and forth. You want this to be snug, not tight, not like you're forcing it in there, but just rubs back and forth very easily. In order to make an adjustment, you loosen up this screw, and you can put a screwdriver in between the case and here, and you slide the base of the points back and forth until you have the 25 thousandths. Then you tighten up this screw and this front screw in that position of high lobe at 25 thousandths. Another thing you want to check is right here on the side of the case. Make sure that these two wires are not touching the case, because then you'll have a grounding issue. Also make sure that your condenser screw is all the way tight, because the condenser gets grounded out against the case there. So once you have that all situated, then you can put your dust cover on. Now when you look at your dust cover, you can read these words and see it says, what's it say? Align with slot and housing, and there's an arrow and there's a slot right here that matches the slot right here in the distributor. So it's very directional, and you just slide it around until you get into that direction. The first time you put it on, like you saw how I have mine, it's got felt in the center, so it's just you have to, kind of push it on there a little bit, not being too rough with it, just setting it on there since it's a brand new part. And then we have a new rotor here. Again, this is directional inside. You can see those 3 tabs. So it just slides on one way, and what you gotta do is make sure that it drops down all the way. When you're setting it on there, you're gonna feel it drop into place completely like that, and then you know that you have your rotor on in the right position. The next step is to replace your spark plugs and your plug wires if you want to. Sometimes wires can be reused, but spark plugs definitely need to be replaced. I have a spark plug socket on here, so I'm just going to set that on there, and then the spark plugs will come all the way out. These do have really long threads on them, so stick with it, and the spark plugs will come out just like that. It's in my socket here, so let me pull that out. There is our old spark plug. When you take your spark plugs out, take a look at them. What you see on your spark plug is a good indication as to the health of your engine. If you see that they're black and oily, or if they're white, or if they're rusty, or whatever have it be, you can then use a chart like this, which this is in that really thick white manual, the reprint of the original Ford manual. And this gives you clues as to what you see in your spark plug, what it could be caused by in your engine. So take a moment if you see something alarming on your spark plug or unusual on your spark plug to figure out what it is. It'll help you in the future. This book does also recommend that you change your spark plugs every 600 hours. You put new ones in, and every 300 hours you clean them and make sure that your gap is good. I'm going to check my gap with a feeler gauge, but this manual does suggest a wire gap gauge. And if you have one of those, you can use it, but a feeler gauge will do the job as well if that's all that you have. So with that, you can look through your manual, study your spark plugs, and then you're ready to put a new set into your tractor. For your new spark plugs, you should check the gap with your feeler gauge. The 25 thousandths that you used for your points is a good check for your spark plugs as well. And then with that, there's a little washer on the end, and then you're ready to just drop it down into the hole. You can get it started by hand and then tighten it the rest of the way with that same socket that you used before. When you're ready to put your new spark plug wire in, take a look at the boot and you can see that it does have a flat side. The flat side is set to go against the head bolt so that there's room. When you have that tightened in, you drive it down all the way, and then the other end of the wire you fish back behind the manifold and onto the appropriate spot on the cap. I'm choosing to put a new cap on this tractor. The center carbon on my old cap was in questionable condition, and I just want to have a fresh cap on and in place. This cap is directional, so look on the inside, you'll see this little square notch right here, and that square notch matches where the arrow is on the dust cover and where the notch is on the distributor. So I'm gonna hold this up here, and if I had the cap in place, wire number 1 would go in the back on my tractor. Remember when I started the video, I said where number 1 went, that it was gonna be on the back for mine. It could be different on yours, so put it wherever it was before. I'm putting a little bit of dielectric grease on the end of this wire here, and you can do the same. I actually like to put that dielectric grease on both ends. You can do it on the spark plug end too. And then you just set that down all the way on in place, and that's wire number 1. I think it's easiest to put wire number 1 on the cap and then slide it back here. Wires number 2 and 3 and the coil wire, you can definitely get those on after the fact, but boy, wire number 1 is really far back there. So I'm gonna slide that around. I know that I'm in place because it fits good, it doesn't move. I know that I have my notch on my cap, and then I'm gonna strap that on, and on the back, I'm gonna reach back there as well. Well, let me take the first one off because that back one's the hardest to put on. I should put that on first. Just trying to feel where it should be. There we go. Now, this one I know is wire number 2. I can move my wire and look in between the manifold and the bottom of the battery tray to see where it is. So again, just a touch of grease on there, and then it's ready to snap in. Just like that. I guess I should put this other snap in place. And then wire number 3 is going to go on here. And then lastly will be the coil wire, which snakes down and goes onto the coil. The coil wire is the shortest in your set, and it does have the 2 matching ends on it. It doesn't have the boot end like you saw for the spark plug end. So set all your wires around there. If you do decide that you want to replace your coil, you certainly can. My coil is good, so I'm not going to replace it, but it's really easy to do so. Just these 2 bolts here hold the strap on into place, then you hook up your wires on the top of it. So if you need to replace your coil, you can. Remember at the beginning of the video, we talked about how to determine if your coil is bad. That determination is done with that spark analyzer, so that's how you're going to know if you want to replace yours or not. If when you try to start your tractor and you turn the key and it just click, 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 and it won't engage the starter, the reason could be your starter solenoid. It could also be a bad ground battery cable, some other things, but the starter solenoid is one thing that could cause that symptom. So if that's a symptom you're having and you want to replace your solenoid, it's really simple. There are 2 screws that hold the solenoid into place. And then on your replacement solenoid, if you look closely, there's an S here, and that stands for safety, and the I stands for ignition. On this side, you have the cable that goes up to the battery, and on the other side, the cable that goes right into the starter. So you can do a simple replacement. This style solenoid is specific to these Ford 2000, 3000, and 4000 series tractors. So when you order this solenoid on our website, make sure the box says for the right tractor that you're working on, since the other solenoids we offer are different for different Ford tractors. And then with that, you can just do a simple starter solenoid replacement. The next part to test on your tractor is the neutral safety switch. That is another component that could prevent your tractor from starting. So there are two styles of neutral safety switches. The one that this tractor has the two wires that come out, and I have them disconnected. So right here, this is where they would hook in. I've pulled that apart so that we can test the neutral safety switch. I have my multimeter set to continuity, and you can do the same. So when you touch your two prongs together, they beep. That's good. Now I'm going to put one end in here and the other end here, and with my tractor neutral, it should beep. And then when I take it in gear, let me try to show that a little better. Let me put this back in neutral. So my switch is working. Then when I shift it into gear, it stops. That shows me that my neutral safety switch is working as it should. If your beep didn't stop on your multimeter when you shift gears, that could indicate to you that your neutral safety switch is broken and you would want to replace it. So if you do want to replace it, I'll show you how to do so. I'm going to set this aside. Around the perimeter here, there are a handful of bolts. I have just one left in here, finger tight, so I'm just going to pull that out. When you pull yours off, make sure that both of your gear shifters are in neutral. That's extremely important. Once they're in neutral, then you can just pull this aside. We are connected by the wires, so you aren't pulling it completely off. You're just pulling it aside so that it can rest out of the way. I'm going to just kind of support that. Inside here, you'll see the two wires that are on top of the safety switch. So let me pull those off. There's one, and there's the other. Just going to set those aside. We'll reconnect those wires, obviously. And then I think this is 1 1/8 wrench. Yes, there we go. So let me, and it's really tight. Let me see if I can just, there we go. I had it loose, so I think I can just pull it out with my fingers the rest of the way. Underneath here is a washer. And as I get close, I'm going to be so careful that I don't drop that washer down into the transmission and then try to fish it out. So I'm just working very carefully. I'd recommend that you do the same. I'm really close. I'm putting my hand behind here to support it. And the washer came off with my safety switch there. I can see it's on there, so that's good. So here's my new safety switch, and I have the washer on here, as you can see right there. And then you're ready to just set it right back into place. It just screws in just like you can imagine. You tighten it up. There's two wires that connect here. This is a switch, so it doesn't matter what wire you put on either side. Just make sure that they're connected up as they should be. Then you can replace your cover. Be careful of the gasket. If you damaged yours and you need a replacement gasket, you can order one. Also be careful of this detent when you set it on, and work carefully and tighten that all back up. Now there are two different styles of safety switches. There's this style that I just put inside this tractor that will have the two wires coming out of the gear shift cover as you see here. If you have the other style of safety switch, the wires will come out on the bottom side of the dash, coming out from like the transmission in this area instead, and will look slightly different. So if yours looks a little bit different than mine, know that you need the other style safety switch for your tractor. Once you have that all put back together, then you can reconnect your two wires up here and your safety switch should be good to go. I hope that these steps are helpful to you and show you how to troubleshoot your tractor and then make the necessary repairs, and that once you're finished, you turn the key and the tractor starts right up and has spark like it should. We have many videos on this series Ford tractor. We talk about the hydraulics, a clutch replacement, the carburetor, injectors if you have a diesel tractor, so look for those videos on our channel. Also, you can click the subscribe button, as that will give you a notification whenever a new video is released. When you're ready to purchase parts, you can do so on our website, which is farmtractorrepair.com. We appreciate your support on our website. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time.